really three parts. I wear a kippah very consistently from after hygiene chores in the morning until going to bed at night. And then, because putting it on is part of my morning prayer, after washing hands. And then I pray 3 times a day, twice standing with the shawl. And they always include just a silent meditation as part of it. And then at night, I say a prayer just in bed, a recitation just for sleep. And then I have for 11 months now, I haven't missed a Sabbath. I have a little Sabbath tray that I bring down off my top shelf, and I light my candles. And I have a, Sabbath ceremony, and then I have a Havdalah ceremony.
So this has this Sabbath times especially.
Yeah, I saw them. That's awesome. Yeah.
It has instructions for lighting.
Okay.
It has all our other classes, everything. We just finished this course. We're doing another course. This is the daily. Whatever, you can score through it. It has a lot of ads in it. That's not
Understand.
for it.
So where does this go to from?
It goes from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah.
Okay.
So it goes from September or October to. So like if you look on any given day, like this week, candle lighting is 5 to 6.
Yeah, it's good today.
Yeah. So
Next page.
we're having a big party on Purim.
It's today.
No, Purim is going to be here.
Today.
It's someone's birthday today. Yeah, people put their birthdays in. We're going to have a big Purim party on this day at 4 p.m. over here. But we read the Megillah in Hebrew, from the traditional scroll and everything. Has some of our events. To get all of my, you have email?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go on my email list, I can, you'll get our updates. Yeah.
Yeah, I found your website and the description of the service today. My Wikipedia page is usually accurate.
All right. So you have enemies out there who change things up, or?
It's been, I realized the coolest thing you can do when you're famous is walk away from it completely and not look back.
And no one knows where you went.
No. It's not to be secretive about it or to disappear, but to just, when you're in the public conversation, to just be like, hold on a second. Step back and fade into the background. I did that 2 years ago. And that's what created the space for me to convert.
Embrace.
The
reason why
embrace is continuous. So what would be the word for that demarcation of time of deciding to
the
embrace?
reason why I keep saying that
I get it.
is you're going to meet different Jews and you're going to say I convert, and
they're going to want to know about a conversion.
They're going to say, conversion. Yeah, conversion means something in the Torah.
Okay, so what would be
embrace?
But
embrace
is something that you do continuously.
Not necessarily. Well,
is there a word of like?
So I'll tell you why
back?
I think the word.
There's a word. There's a term
teshuva,
for me,
teshuva.
And it's becoming a
Baal teshuva.
Baal teshuva. Thank you.
Means
That's
repenting.
It.
But I'll tell you why embrace is good, because when somebody finds out they're Jewish, they also find out that Judaism is never going to let them go. In other words, you could say, hey, I'm not Jewish anymore. And, human beings have the ability to believe what they like. But Judaism is always going to consider them Jewish.
Sure. No, I would like the word to describe the moment I decided to embrace the practice.
Let me think about it.
Or the event of
Let me think of a good word.
mean?
Yeah, let me think of a good word.
Embrace is not wrong, but it's not specific enough.
Let me think about it. All right, so the Tanya is a book we study Wednesday. It's actually one of my favorite classes. I put it on video, so not a lot of people watch, but there's just a few people who follow with me. And, there's 53 chapters. So we're in chapter 4. We go very slowly. But, I don't advertise my stuff too much. People ask me, I said, hey, sometimes we miss a day. So Tanya, the Tanya is a book written by the first Chabad Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, who was a huge mystic, quite a revolutionary rabbi. Now, what he was revolutionary in is what's called Chabad philosophy. Chabad philosophy basically means the integration of mysticism into regular understanding, regular life. And that was considered a miracle because the mystics, they always stayed a little separate. They had like a sixth sense, and like they couldn't relate to other people. They could tell people to be like, hey, Adam, this is what it means to be a Jew. Follow what I say, you'd never understand it. And people knew these guys were miracle workers. They were living in a different world. So the Alter Rebbe was the first Chabad, the first rabbi who said, no, I'm going to bridge the gap. I'm going to make a methodology for regular people to understand the meaning of mysticism. And they won't necessarily become miracle workers, like they might not gain the sixth sense, but I'm going to make this combination. And we believe that when Mashiach comes, the integration will be complete. The redemption is like God will be fully revealed. We'll see God everywhere in everything. Now, we don't see God in everything, but the Alter Rebbe gives tools to see God in everything somewhat. So in the beginning of the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe just talks about the physiology of a human, of a Jew especially, that a Jew, he says, has two souls. He has two souls, one body and two souls. And he starts off, he says, there's the godly soul, which basically has a full mind of its own, but it's godly. It's just attracted to God. And then there's the human soul, which he calls the animal soul. Just like animals have souls, we also have an animal soul. The animal soul basically is the default soul that we relate to. It acts out of self-interest. Now, because we do now, and the godly soul is subconscious. However, it's our soul. And so we do have this little friction inside of us. It does knock on the door. It does. So what the Alter Rebbe is going to explain in Tanya is the purpose of these two souls are actually to invite the godly soul and transform the animal soul to become godly itself. And that's what we do during life. And when we do a mitzvah, you put tefillin on, essentially you're bringing godly soul energy into animal soul. And we don't want to avoid the animal soul because our godly soul, before we were born, there was only our godly soul. And he was doing just fine. But God puts him into the animal soul to struggle with the animal soul because that's how we really get close to God. By that struggle, that's how we really get close to God. So that's what the Tanya starts off, and the Tanya is a lot about. But it goes in great detail on the physiology of the godly soul and animal soul to really understand it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. We said the animal soul is not necessarily selfish. It may be selfish, but someone here said, well, more like self-interest. He wants to take care of himself. He wants to survive. That's all he wants. Now, in society, there's nothing wrong with that. But in Judaism, we ultimately don't want to act out of self-interest. We want to act out of God interest. We don't want to care about survival. We want to care about God. And so therefore, the Alter Rebbe goes kind of black and white. Self-interest is selfish, and it's not the point of our lives to just, get money or food or take care of ourselves or survive. The point of our life is to grow, and that comes from the godly soul. Now, what we said is, I'm just summarizing, we said the godly soul is essentially a part of God. So God puts a part of God in the godly soul. Then the godly soul goes through a cycle where it develops a personality. But the Alter Rebbe says, just like an embryo, when it's embryo, the seed of the father is the father, and there's no part of the body which is less you and more you. However, in the brain, we can see more of you than in the nail, let's say, right? In different parts of the body, there's more of a sensitivity to you, who you are. So the same thing, there's every soul of the Jewish people comes from God, and then it develops and creates a character, and some souls it's not sensed in them that they are as godly as other souls, but really they are. We said, how do they reveal it? Well, there's different, just like there are different body parts, there are different souls which have more sensitivity and less sensitivity. And when we connect together, say, with the brain souls, then it reveals in us who we really are. And that's just the cycle of the godly soul. So then we explained that the godly soul has emotions, godly emotions. It has a deep love for God and a fear and an awe of God. And and it has perception of God. It sees God everywhere. The godly soul sees God everywhere. And when we contemplate God, what God has revealed to us, and we contemplate God's being, it arouses emotions to God. This is the godly soul. The animal soul, we'll talk about later, works a little backwards. A lot of times the animal soul has the emotion and tries to push the emotional agenda into his intellect. The godly soul is the opposite. He has the perception, and when he thinks about it a lot, it actually develops a relationship. Okay, so now we're at chapter 4. I know it's a lot. I mean, we've gone through a lot of pages already, but I suggest learning the Tanya. The Tanya is a really great, deep understanding of Jewish purpose. Okay. Va'od yesh l'chol nefesh shlosh levushim. Elikis shlosh levushim. So I'm going to read from the Hebrew version. I just really like this Hebrew version. You can follow in English. The godly soul, besides having mind and emotions, it also has what are called garments. Shehem machshava d'ramaisa shal targim tzatara. The garments of the soul are the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah. Right? So now, let me just go through a little bit what it means, garments. Thought, speech, and action are called the garments. Why? Because your emotions you can't really get rid of. You can sometimes turn higher, lower, but emotions are like your body parts. It's like you can't get rid of your body parts. Thought, speech, and action are not as connected to the person. So it's like thinking, speech, you can stop talking. Action, you can stop doing something or start doing something. It's like a garment. You can put it on, take it off. Thoughts, they're also considered like a garment because you can't stop thinking, but you can change what you're thinking about. You're not necessarily thinking about what you believe, or you could think something that's totally false. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can just say, next 5 minutes, I'm going to think about something which I don't believe in, right? So the godly soul has intellect. Intellect is not thoughts. Intellect is like axioms which are ingrained in the soul. It has emotions which are also ingrained in the soul. And then it has thought, speech, and action. Now for the godly soul is only interested in godly things. The thought, speech, and action are when you think about Torah, that's godly thought. When you speak about Torah or speak about a mitzvah or think about a mitzvah, these are using godly garments of the soul. When you do a mitzvah, that's another godly garment. So now that is just working down up from above to below. So kisha'ad the makayim ma'isa kol mitzvahs ma'isa is when a person does a mitzvah, an action. Well, you know what a mitzvah is? What is it? Commandment. Very good. A lot of people say it's a good deed. Now, good deed isn't accurate because mitzvah might be considered a good deed nowadays, might not be considered. It's a commandment from God. There's a commander, and he asked us to do something. So that's what a mitzvah is. Now, what is so important about mitzvahs? Without God initiating our relationship, we have no way to really connect to Him because we're finite. No matter what we're stuck in ourselves. Only God is truly infinite. So God's true infinite. He kind of says, "Hey, Adam, I'm going to reach out to you. I want you to connect to me. So I'm going to give you some conduits where you'll be able to connect to me. So you'll be able to connect to infinite God." So when a person does the mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs in action, and in speech, he's working at studying Torah or prayer, right? But he's using his speech for that. And in his thoughts, he grasps. So in the Torah, you have many layers. There's the simple understanding of everything, homiletic understanding, etc., etc. But when he uses his mind to perceive these, to grasp them, what is he doing? He's taking his intellect and he's taking his emotions, which are like his body, his limbs, and he's putting them in the 613 commandments. He's involving them. He's connecting them to God through the commandments. So actually, interesting in Jewish tradition, there's 613 limbs. Well, 248 limbs and 365 veins and sinews. And in the Torah, there are 613 mitzvahs, 248 positive, 365 negative. So, when we connect our limbs, so to speak, to the Torah, we're bringing God into every section of us. More specifically, the Chabad. Chabad is what we said before, it's the intellectual faculties. Chabad is Chachma, Bina, Das. So very quickly, Chachma is the original idea that our minds get. We get the way our minds work, we get an idea, and then we develop the idea, and then we apply the idea. So we make the idea matter. So when we have our Chabad, our faculties, they are involved and wearing the clothing, clothed in understanding, grasping Torah, according to both the effort that we grasp something, and also our souls, they have a connection automatically to, our souls are somewhat finite. They're much more infinite than our bodies, but they're somewhat finite. They have certain parts of the Torah that they connect to, because all Jewish souls are like one body. So just like in our body, there's different mitzvahs connect to different parts. In our souls, there's different mitzvahs which connect to different people more. All souls have to do all the mitzvahs, but we all have special mitzvahs that we connect to, which is because so we also have like a potential part of Torah that our souls are attracted to. So when we do that and we invest in that in our thought, speech, and action, so now our minds are invested in our Torah study. And our midos. So our midos are our character traits, but they're often translated as our emotions. So we said generally people have two emotions. There's actually 7 emotions, but they're divided in two. There's divided in two, really 3. There's love and fear. There's close and far. Now, on the love side, you have fighting for what you love. On the far side, you have fighting someone you hate. Could be because you love something greater. So there's many combinations of how the emotion, but generally there's emotion which is all about closeness, and emotion which is all about strictness, pulling back.
Drawing towards or pushing away.
Yeah. And so now when we do that, when we study Torah and do mitzvahs, what we're doing is we're investing. Now, they're not drawing close and pulling away are not good and evil necessarily. They're more like nice and strict. There's a context for each of the emotions. So when we do the mitzvah, so let's say negative mitzvahs are more connected to awe. Don't do this. It's like, why wouldn't I do it? I don't want to mess with God. I don't want to disrespect Him. Love has to do with mitzvahs which are positive, like I want to do something proactive for Him. So when we do a mitzvah, or we think, or we study Torah, what we're doing is we are investing our emotions and our intellectual faculties into the mitzvah that we're doing. So, so we invest our emotions in our prayer and in our speech, and we invest our emotions into our action. So now we're going to explain more specifically how that works. So now the godly soul, his emotions are solely directed to God. They're solely directed to God. The animal soul, typically his emotions are directed to himself. Now what we're actually doing here is the Alter Rebbe is kind of dissecting the human. Before we say how to deal or how to live life or how to, deal with that split with us, the Alter Rebbe is kind of dissecting. And he starts off with the godly soul, so we should just understand how it works, and we should understand when it's calling. And then he goes into the animal soul, and then he talks about how they struggle with each other, and then he talks about ultimately what he's going to try and explain how the animal soul can really feel God is close. That's an ability of human beings, is to really live in a godly reality, even though intuitively we're born in a self-serving or self-interest reality. That's the okay. If you have love, the love is the source of us performing all of the 248 positive mitzvahs. And that's where the mitzvahs come from. And without it, so there will not be a everlasting true fulfillment. So a lot of times what happens is we do a mitzvah and we do it without love. So we might do it out of habit. We'll do it out of habit, and eventually it fizzles out. One of the things later we'll study about is a lot of times we do a mitzvah, and if we don't grow in our observance with it, we don't think of ways to grow in it, what happens is it kind of fizzles out because we get so used to it, it becomes second nature. Now, second nature is not, doing a mitzvah out of second nature, it's not good, but actually it is. Second nature means it's God's communication that we need to add in it. When there's like a mitzvah that we're interested in and suddenly we're not so interested in it anymore, it means God says, okay, good, you trained yourself. It became a part of you. Now, if you want to find me, you got to grow and go out of yourself. And that's what we Jews should always be trying to do. You know, if we give tzedakah every day, we should try to do it until we're used to it. And then we can go and do more, you know. And so a lot of times Jews and people, they take the wrong communication. They say like, oh, this is boring. I'm not going to do it anymore. Really, no. It's boring is a good thing. It means that you got used to doing something good.
Absorbed.
You've absorbed it. But now that's a sign that you have to take it to a new level, or add in another mitzvah, or add in and put that one on the back burner, or put that level of dedication in the back burner, because you got to grow it. You got to grow in some way. So that's okay. So now it says here that if you do a mitzvah without love, without fear, without any emotional, it won't last that long, necessarily. Now, even if you force yourself to do a mitzvah, you're actually...
It's better than not.
Well, you actually have love there. What's forcing you to do it? You care.
Kavanah.
Yeah, you care, right? So sometimes people think, if I got to force myself, I'm not doing it well. No, that's actually really good. You know, what happens is either sometimes we get used to doing something, or we do something because what someone else will say. So those will usually die out. But if you force yourself, you can know, hey, you can stop and say, hey, I'm doing something I don't want to do. Hey, God, that's a lot of love in there, you know? Not necessarily is love always romantic.
And it's your God soul overcoming your animal soul.
Yes, correct. So not necessarily is love always romantic in the Tanya. In fact, usually it says romantic love actually might not last either. But commitment love is the best. Okay, so let's just read a little bit more, and then I got to stop here. Someone who does the mitzvah, he in the true way, he loves God and he wants to connect him. You cannot connect to God. We can't connect to God without his 248 mitzvahs. These in the Kabbalah, in Jewish mysticism, we have our limbs, and then God has his limbs. He creates limbs. What are those limbs? Those are the mitzvahs. So we're connecting our limbs to his limbs, and we can't truly connect to him, as we said before, because anything that we find in ourselves at a certain point is connecting to ourselves, our own perception. So now, here it says the positive mitzvahs and not the negative mitzvahs. Well, negative mitzvahs, you just got to sit and not do them. Not necessarily is there a lot of emotion in that. But when you do a positive mitzvah, like tefillin or anything, you're basically saying, here, God, this is a gift. This is a gift that I have prepared for you today. And, you know, God gives us so many gifts, and we give him gifts also, and that's how we commit to him, and he commits to us.
On the negative or the prohibitive, there's the still positive action of recognition.
So there's positive action and recognition, and also sometimes our animal soul really wants to do something wrong, and we got to fight and battle for that. But so there is love and fear in both of them. And also it's like sometimes when you get used to your mitzvahs don't have passion, they still have fear in them. But generally, love is the positive and fear is the negative. That's the way it's supposed to be. The fear is not like a fear of punishment. It's a fear of awe. It's like, here's the awesome God who's the creator of everything. And here he puts me in his home. You know, he puts me in his world, and he wants me to make a home for him. So that's all right. We'll stop here. Any questions, comments, or so? How often are you in town here?